3 months ago, a case landed on my desk that made me rethink everything I thought I knew about loyalty and betrayal. It all started with a phone call to the newsroom, a woman's voice trembling with tears. My dog attacked me, the same one I rescued as a puppy 8 years ago. No one believes he could have done such a thing. When I first heard this story, I thought it couldn't be true. A dog that had been saved from death attacking its savior years later? It sounded like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, not a real story from the Russian countryside. But the documents I managed to obtain told a completely different version of events. Larisa Mikhailovna Krupskaya worked as a veterinarian in a small town near Tver. At 42, she was the person people brought dying animals to when other doctors threw up their hands. Neighbors joked that she had a real zoo at home: 3 cats, 2 parrots, a turtle, and a fish tank. But she never had a dog. I've always been afraid of big dogs, Larisa Mikhailovna confessed to me when we met at the regional hospital where she was undergoing rehabilitation. After that incident in my childhood, when I was bitten by a sheepdog in the yard, I preferred to stay away from them. Ironic, isn't it? On a cold February morning in 2016, a cardboard box was brought to the veterinary clinic. Inside was a puppy that looked more like a skeleton covered in fur. A pitbull, no more than 2 months old. Its body temperature was critically low and it was dehydrated and emaciated. The owners decided to get rid of the dog by throwing it out into the cold. My colleagues said, "Don't waste your time, it won't survive," recalls Larisa Mikhailovna. But I looked into those eyes. There was such a will to live, such hope. I couldn't just walk away and let him die. For the next 2 weeks, she hardly left the clinic, nursing the puppy around the clock. She fed him with a pipette, warmed him with her body, and massaged his paws to restore blood circulation. The puppy survived. Larisa Mikhailovna named him Rex and took him home. He was so grateful, she says. He always tried to be close to me, saw me off to work, and met me at the door. When I was sick, he lay next to my bed and didn't leave until I felt better. Rex grew up to be a strong and healthy dog. By the age of 2, he weighed almost 40 kilograms, but his temperament remained gentle and docile. The neighbors in the 9-story building got used to him, and the children in the yard played with him without fear. The kindest dog was how everyone who knew Rex described him. Even the local police officer, who at first looked askance at the pit bull in the neighborhood, admitted after a year, "You don't often see such a well-behaved dog." But I noticed one detail in Rex's medical records. At the age of 3, he began to have behavioral problems. Not aggression, but rather oddities. Sometimes he would sit in a corner for hours staring at one spot, or he would suddenly start barking at nothing, as if he saw something invisible to the human eye. "I thought it was just a phase," explains Larisa Mikhailovna. "I showed him to colleagues, had tests done. Everything was normal. We decided it was just his personality." A veterinary neurologist from Moscow, whom I consulted, explained to me that such symptoms could indicate hidden brain damage sustained at an early age from hypothermia and exhaustion. The years passed. Rex became increasingly withdrawn. Whereas he used to greet guests happily, he now preferred to go into another room. He stopped playing with the children in the yard. "I put it down to growing up," says Larisa Mikhailovna. "I thought he was just becoming more serious, like many dogs do as they get older." In the spring of 2023, the first alarming incident occurred. Rex bit a neighbor's cat that had wandered onto their balcony. It wasn't a serious bite, but it was enough to scare Larisa Mikhailovna. He had never touched other animals before, she recalls. "I thought maybe the cat had provoked him, defending its territory." I met with the neighbor who owned the injured cat. Barsik was just sitting on the balcony railing, Anna Petrovna told me. Rex jumped out like a madman and grabbed him by the neck. Thank God Larisa quickly pulled the dog away. But Rex's eyes were not the same. They were cloudy, as if he didn't recognize me. After this incident, Larisa Mikhailovna took Rex to a veterinary neurologist in the regional center. Dr. Semenov, a specialist with 30 years of experience, conducted a full examination. No signs of organic brain damage were found, he wrote in his report. Perhaps these are age-related mental changes or stress from a change in routine. But Semenov, with whom I spoke after the tragedy, admitted, "Something about this dog's behavior alarmed me. She was too tense, constantly looking around as if she were expecting an attack. I've seen this kind of behavior in animals that have been through serious trauma. He recommended a course of sedatives and closer observation of the pet. The summer of 2023 passed relatively calmly. Rex took his prescribed medication and seemed more balanced. Larisa Mikhailovna even thought about getting him a companion, a second dog. Maybe he's just lonely, she wondered. I'm at work from morning till night, and he's home alone all day. In the fall, Rex's strange behavior intensified. He began to refuse the food his owner gave him, but eagerly ate his food if someone else put his bowl down. He started growling at his reflection in the mirror. At night, he would rush around the apartment, whining and scratching at the doors as if trying to get out. I was seriously considering putting him in a specialized clinic, says Larisa Mikhailovna. But he was more than just a dog to me. I saved his life. We had been together for so many years. How could I abandon him in his time of need? The fateful day, January 15th, 2024, began as usual. Larisa Mikhailovna got up at 7 in the morning, fed all the animals, and got ready for work. Rex was lying in his usual spot by the radiator and didn't even lift his head when she said goodbye. I thought, finally he's calmed down, she recalls. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Larisa Mikhailovna returned home for her lunch break. Usually Rex would meet her at the door, but this time the hallway was quiet. She went into the kitchen and started heating up some soup. Then she heard strange noises coming from the living room, a quiet growl that turned into whimpering. I entered the room and saw Rex in the corner, Larisa Mikhailovna recounts. He was standing there, pressed against the wall, his fur standing on end, his eyes. Oh my God, those eyes. He was looking at me, but it was as if he didn't recognize me. I tried to approach him to call his name, but he growled like he had never done before. For the next few minutes, she tried to calm the dog down, speaking to him in a quiet voice and slowly approaching him. Rex backed further into the corner, his growling becoming louder. And then something snapped in his brain. He lunged at me without warning, Larisa Mikhailovna whispers. I didn't even have time to understand what was happening. 40 kilograms of weight crashed down on the woman, knocking her off her feet. Rex grabbed her left arm, then her shoulder. Larisa Mikhailovna screamed, trying to push the dog away, but the strength was unequal. I thought, that's it. This is the end, she says. The worst part wasn't the pain, but the fact that Rex was doing this. My Rex, the one I saved. A phone call saved her. Rex was distracted by the sound and loosened his grip. Larisa Mikhailovna managed to break free and lock herself in the bathroom. Through the door, she could hear the dog rushing around the apartment, knocking over furniture and howling. With trembling hands, she dialed the emergency vet service. The team that arrived found Rex in the hallway. He was lying motionless, breathing heavily with foam coming out of his mouth. This is typical of an acute psychotic episode in animals, explained veterinarian Igor Volkov, who responded to the call. The dog was in a state close to coma. We administered strong sedatives and transported him to the clinic. Larisa Mikhailovna spent 2 weeks in the hospital. She had multiple lacerations, damaged tendons in her left arm, and a concussion. The physical injuries are healing, but the psychological scars will remain forever. I still flinch when I hear a dog barking outside, she admits. Rex had to be put down. The veterinary report was unequivocal. Acute behavioral disorder of unknown etiology with a high risk of repeated aggressive episodes. The autopsy revealed changes in the structure of the brain that could have been either congenital or acquired as a result of early trauma. We did everything we could to save him, Dr. Semenov, the head veterinarian at the clinic, told me. But sometimes the damage is too deep to be repaired. The tragedy is that the signs of the disease only appeared years later, when it was too late to change anything. Rex's case received widespread coverage in the local press. Animal rights activists were divided into 2 camps. Some claimed that the pit bull's aggression was caused by improper training, while others insisted on the breed's genetic predisposition to sudden fits of rage. But the truth, as is often the case, turned out to be more complicated than any simple explanation. Neurovet Maria Kulikova from the Moscow Academy of Veterinary Medicine, who studied the case, explained to me, Severe hypothermia and exhaustion during a critical period of brain development could have caused micro damage to neurons. This damage may not manifest itself for years and then lead to sudden behavioral disorders. 3 months later, Larisa Mikhailovna returned to work. Her hands have not yet fully recovered, but she is treating animals again. I can't blame Rex, she says. He didn't choose to be sick. I saved him as a puppy, and he gave me 8 years of love and devotion. What happened in the end is not his fault. There are no more dogs in her house, only cats, parrots, and aquarium fish. But on the bookshelf stands a photograph, a young woman hugging a pitbull puppy. It was Rex in the days when he was just learning to walk after his illness. It was true happiness, says Larisa Mikhailovna. And I am grateful for every day we spent together. This story made me think about the nature of loyalty and betrayal. Rex did not betray his owner. He was sick. Larisa Mikhailovna was not naive. She was human. Sometimes love requires us to take risks, even knowing that the risk may turn out to be tragic. Today, when I see stray animals on the streets, I remember Rex's story. Each of them could have been a loyal companion, but each carries its own pain, its own hidden traumas. Rescue is not only a matter of kindness, but also of enormous responsibility for the consequences. Perhaps if Larisa Mikhailovna had known back then, in the winter of 2016, what her decision to save a dying puppy would lead to, she would have done things differently. Or maybe not. I would have done the same thing, she told me as we parted, because 8 years of happiness are worth the risk. The story of Rex and Larisa Mikhailovna did not end with his death. In the months that followed, I continued my investigation, trying to understand if the tragedy could have been prevented. I managed to find people who had known the dog from the beginning, and their stories revealed new and unexpected details. Valentina Sergeyevna Ponomareva, a pensioner who lives upstairs, was the first to notice Rex's strange behavior back in 2019. I walk my dachshund Juchka every morning, the thin woman with a piercing gaze told me, and I saw how Rex behaved on walks. At first, he was a normal puppy, playful, curious. But then something changed. Valentina Sergeyevna kept a kind of observation diary, not on purpose. She just wrote down interesting moments from her neighbors' lives. May 28th, 2019, she reads from a worn notebook. Today, Rex barked at a pigeon sitting on a bench 40 meters away from him for half an hour. Larisa couldn't calm him down. He never paid any attention to birds before. August 15th, 2019. Rex refused to take his usual route. He resisted and whined. Larisa tried to lead him through the park. He walked normally. The next day, the same thing happened. Valentina Sergeyevna remembers how surprised she was at the time. It was as if the dog saw something we didn't notice. These notes led me to consult an animal behavior specialist. Dr. Andrei Maximov, a zoopsychologist with 20 years of experience, carefully studied all the case materials. Classic signs of a progressive neurological disorder, he concluded. The animal is gradually losing the ability to respond appropriately to familiar stimuli. But the most interesting discovery awaited me in the archives of the veterinary clinic. Nurse Tatiana Viktorovna, who had been working there for 15 years, recalled an episode from Rex's puppyhood. When he was about 4 months old, he fell off the couch during an examination. He hit his head on the metal leg of the table. We thought it was nothing serious. Puppies are resilient. But now looking back, I realized that maybe that blow also affected his brain development. The skulls of small dogs are still soft, and any injury can have long-term consequences. This information was not included in Rex's medical records. Back then, no one paid attention to such details. I decided to find out what happened to the other puppies from the same litter. Through online ads, I managed to find the owners of 2 other dogs. One of them, a female named Lada, lived a happy life in a private home near Kaluga. She died of cancer at the age of 10. She never had any behavioral problems. But the story of a male dog named Baron turned out to be similar to Rex's fate. He also started behaving strangely at around 4 years old, his owner, locksmith Mikhail Petrovich, told me. At first, he stopped approaching children, then he became afraid of loud noises. And at 7 years old, he attacked a neighbor's dog for no reason. Baron had to be taken to a shelter. He lived there for another year, but his aggression only intensified. In the end, he was also put down. I felt sorry for the dog. says Mikhail Petrovich. But what could we do if he had become dangerous even to us? This information confirmed the hypothesis of a genetic predisposition to neurological disorders in puppies from specific parents. But it proved impossible to find the breeder who sold that litter 8 years ago. The ads on the internet have long since been removed, and the phone numbers are not answering. Meanwhile, the story of Rex took an unexpected turn. A group called Justice for Rex appeared on social media, whose members claimed that the dog had been put down unfairly. The aggression was provoked by the owner herself through improper training, they wrote. Rex was a victim, not a criminal. The group's administrator, a young woman named Alina, agreed to meet with me. She is 23 years old, a veterinary student, and an animal rights activist. I studied all the case materials, she said, and I came to the conclusion that Larisa Mikhailovna is hiding the truth about what happened to the dog. Neighbors told me they heard screams coming from the apartment before the attack. Perhaps the woman was beating the dog and then came up with a story about sudden aggression to shift the blame. Alina showed me screenshots of online posts where anonymous users had indeed written something similar. I checked these claims by talking to neighbors on the landing. None of them heard screams or sounds of beating coming from Larisa Mikhailovna's apartment. They were quiet, confirmed the neighbor from downstairs. Sometimes you could only hear the TV and barking when someone rang the doorbell. Sergei Nikolaevich, a local police officer who has been working in the area for 10 years, also did not recall any complaints about animal abuse. Larisa Mikhailovna was a model tenant. There were never any problems with her. I myself saw her walking her dog. She treated it like a child. But the online campaign was gaining momentum. Fake accounts appeared, spreading rumors about the animal-killing veterinarian. Larisa Mikhailovna began to be recognized on the streets, with some passers-by pointing at her. She had to change jobs and move to another neighborhood. The most painful thing is the accusations of cruelty. Larisa Mikhailovna confessed to me when we met for the second time. I have devoted my entire life to treating animals. Rex was not just a pet to me, he was a member of the family. How could anyone think that I would hurt him? Psychologist Elena Viktorovna, who worked with Larisa Mikhailovna after the tragedy, explained to me the mechanism behind such accusations. It is psychologically difficult for people to accept that a tragedy can happen through no one's fault. It is easier to find someone to blame than to admit that the world is unpredictable and cruel. Meanwhile, I continued to search for answers to the main question: could the attack have been prevented? In Europe, there are special rehabilitation centers for dogs with behavioral disorders. One such center operates in Germany under the direction of Dr. Stefan Müller. We could have helped this dog, he said after studying Rex's medical history. Modern behavior correction methods combined with drug therapy give good results even in difficult cases. But such a center is thousands of kilometers away from the Russian hinterland, and treatment costs tens of thousands of euros. There are virtually no such institutions in Russia. We tend to solve problems with aggressive animals in a radical way, veterinarian Semenov explained to me. There is a lack of specialists, equipment, and funding. It's easier to put them down than to treat them.